Hello and welcome to Business Line podcast. I'm your host Venkatesha Babu. I'm a deputy editor with the organization. Today we have a very interesting discussion around one of India's most economically vibrant and growth-oriented segments, that is the IT-enabled services industry, which has been commonly referred in multiple monikers as either the business process service industry or now given its all-encompassing nature as a business process management sector or BPM. The addressable global BPM market, according to various estimates, is around $250 billion and expected to grow up to $336 billion by 2025. Over the last couple of decades, especially, India rightly has been referred to as the back office of the world. This year, industry body NASSCOM estimates that the Indian BPM industry to be at around $44 billion, which includes enterprise front and back office, contact centers, vertical-oriented BPM, and various other segments of the industry. The sector is also a very large and lucrative employer, employs about 1.4 million people directly and several multiples of that indirectly. The industry has gone a paradigm shift over the last couple of decades. It has evolved. BPM 1.0 was all about cost savings and labor arbitrage when stuff were moved to India primarily to save on money. BPM 2.0, the emphasis was on operational excellence through efficiency and quality of processes. BPM 3.0 heralded the advent of deep technology and domain expertise. Now there is this new shift towards BPM 4.0, which lays stress on enabling business outcomes, ensuring resilience and agility. To enable this to become a reality, the industry needs to reorient itself, reskill its workforce, train, invest in technologies like AI and ML to make this a reality. To discuss this and how ready the Indian BPM sector is and the shift happening towards BPM 4.0, we have a very eminent panel today. We have Prashant Achanta, the CTO of FirstSource. Welcome to the show, Prashant. We have Sukanya Selvarajan, who is the Innovation Head and CFO Operations of Tata Consultancy Services. And we have Amneet Chaudhary, who is a Vice President and Global Head for Infrastructure Technologies at Sutherland Global Services. Welcome to the show, gentlemen and lady. Before I get into the meat of the discussion, why don't each of you weigh in a little bit in terms of the opportunity of BPM 4.0? Amneet, why don't you start off by talking a little bit about whether the shift has actually taken place, whether we are still in the last phases of BPM 3.0 itself, and whether the opportunity is still a little bit down the line, or rather it's already done, is happening as we speak.
So thanks, Venkatesh. We are at a transition phase at this point of time, I would say, from 3.0 to 4.0. There are many changes which are happening across the globe or even in India from that matter. And we are seeing as we progress further, the need for our customers to build AI-based solutions, which is more related to your conversational IVRs, or we are talking about omni-channel, or we are talking about BPM engines with artificial intelligence. So we are seeing this paradigm shift happening, and customers and even we are adapting to that. That is mostly from a delivery standpoint, but internally, from our standpoint, we are also seeing that the AI-based infrastructure, which we call, is also getting into a more and more implementation stage from a transitory stage now. So if we look into our GTOC services or our security operations center, or if we look into our EDRs, or if we are talking about our antivirus solutions, most of them all, in order to meet the demand of the customer, are adapting themselves to these changes from an infrastructure standpoint. So even the concepts of micro-segmentation, or we are talking about zoning or zero trust, these are the phases, these are the technologies which we used to earlier work on a more adaptive, non-AI based way. But we are seeing that AI coming into the play now, and more predictive assessments are happening in terms of the threats that are getting generated. And one of the key things, which is one of the highlights, is when we are developing to safeguard support our customers, there are non-state actors also who are possessing similar cyber threats through the whole AI, using the whole AI model itself. So it's not only us to help our customers, but it is also us to protect our client data and our whole infrastructure with using the same model or using the same mechanism of AI. So to answer your question, Sort, we are adapting to that and we are way ahead in that.
Sukanya Tata Consultancy Services, of course, is India's largest and preeminent IT services and IT services enabled services exporter. What is the perspective that TCS brings to the table in terms of the shift happening?
So I think we are in a conflux, Venkatesh. I think Industry 4.0 is no longer just a flashy catchphrase, and that I think industries across the globe are acknowledging that fact. A confluence of trends and technologies are essentially promising to essentially reshape the way things are made, things are perceived, things are observed, so to say. And the BPM 4.0 is essentially having far-reaching implications for the industry, especially the CXO community is seeing a lot of interest, a lot of their prerogatives being met by this whole BPM industry in the new era, bringing in the trends, bringing in the technologies, bringing in the functional knowledge, bringing all of that together, wrapping it together and delivering so that the business value is delivered. And I don't think, you rightly pointed out, we moved away from the whole productivity, efficiency standpoint. It's about, upping the mark. How can we go even more and meet the prerogatives of the CXO community, improve speed to value, reduce risk, improve compliance. So those are the elements that we look at ticking off when we go and approach a customer and provide services.
Prashant, the sector as a whole, especially a large number of Indian players, and FirstSource, of course, has been a pioneer in this space for a long time. There has been a shift from being order takers to being more of partners who are invested in ensuring outcomes. But this also requires a shift in terms of the workforce, in terms of how your own employees look at and address challenges. What have you been doing to ensure that this becomes a reality?
Yeah. So Venkatesh, if you would allow me, I really had a comment on the previous question, right?
Sure.
We'll get to that and answer the next one. And, I do agree with my panelists, but, unambiguously, BPM 4.0 is here and now. All right. So it is a continuum. Yes. So on the supply side and demand side, we will have specific segments and specific players, specific engagements operating in a 3.0 mode or a 2.0 mode. But, aspirationally from the supply side, which is us, and on the demand side, which is, the markets that we serve, the expectation is to deliver 4.0, right? And when I say 4.0 versus 3.0, 3.0 was essentially IT ops synergies, end-to-end offerings, right? And the like. And the transition that has clearly happened is, platforms and AI, which is like completely mainstream. Customers are looking for outcomes, and that is driving the shift. Now, getting to the next question, it's also important to understand the wider landscape, right? Of while we are shifting from 3.0 to 4.0, what has fueled that is like, two external paradigms, right? One is there is this entire SaaS marketplace, and, a lot to be proud from an India standpoint, right? We have, a lot of Indian players out there, massively in the news, truly proud of that, right? But, globally, there has been like a SaaS phenomenon, and, India as a geography has played a role, right? The second part of it is like, the cloud adoption has been on a hockey stick curve, right? And, there is no stopping it, right? I mean, there are challenges, adoption challenges here and there. There are shifts which are happening, but, overall, these are like massive shifts happening. And then, the BPM 3.0 to, 4.0, is also aligned, and, there are synergies across these three segments. For FirstSource, our heritage and largely what we focus on is, delivering outcomes, right? And as we have transitioned, right, the outcome delivery has always been enabled by a digital first agenda, right? And when we looked at digital, we looked at platforms, we looked at AI, we looked at automation, right? And then we not just looked at digital technologies, but we look at digital methods, right? What do I mean by that? Is like digital in isolation might not help us be successful. We need active partnership with human in the loop, right? So at what point in time does operations come in, right? How do we optimize, how do we make those synergies work, like, are a key aspect. So in terms of what we are doing, we are looking at the execution model to ensure that, operations, IT, there is a tight interlock. Operations teams are part of like technology engagements, right? So there's a delivery lifecycle change. So from a training standpoint, we've significantly invested in cross-skilling our technology workforce. But on the other hand, closely tied with this operations and IT synergy, we have also launched massive citizen development programs. What do we mean by citizen development programs? We enable our operations teams with a technology bent of mind and, help them pick up skills on RPA, low-code platforms, engage them with AI testing, right? Those aspects, so that we leverage the depth of their domain expertise. We make them part of the program to drive overall success. Those are a few examples, right? I mean, we could take the entire hour, but, I just wanted to give you those highlights. Sorry if I took a long time. Yeah.
No, perfectly fine. Just to go back on that issue of platforms and IP, Sukanya, if you could weigh in, given that TCS as a whole has been emphasizing a lot, in the past, a lot of your rewards were tied to the number of people being deployed, but the whole platform IP premise is that there is no direct linear correlation between the two. Are we seeing that in terms of actual end outcomes for customers, both for TCS and for the Indian BPM industry as a whole?
No, absolutely. And I think one of the key drivers for this, Venkatesh, has been our machine-first delivery model that TCS has pioneered, essentially giving the first right of refusal to machines and bots to essentially execute a task. And thereafter, picking up, bringing the human in the loop to ensure that the activities thereof, which is not attended to, the exceptions, the fallouts, are the kind of tasks that the human workforce essentially goes back to attending, and then leveraging your AI ML model to essentially go back and say, hey, having understood the nuances where it's falling out or an exception being created, can we ensure that this learning is readapted into the system to ensure that the machine picks it up the second time around? And this is a small example, Venkatesh, in terms of how the approach has shifted, and obviously the productivity efficiency gain is a thing of the past. Now, bringing in the MFTM model, the shift also in perspective of what does it take for the team to deliver this has gone, has shifted significantly from what we've seen from previous generations. In fact, even if you compare it 4 years ago, Venkatesh, the ask for the talent, the demand pool is extremely different, and thanks to COVID, in a way, I think this is kind of what I would like to call turbocharged the whole BPM 4.0 endeavor in itself.
It is so interesting that you mentioned that pandemic bit and the challenges which the industry and the world as a whole has had to undergo over the last couple of years. Amrit, what has this meant, especially because this is now more of a distributed workforce? It is no more, warm bodies concentrated in a single place. How do you ensure that, given this kind of constraints, how do you ensure that you still meet the outcomes required by the customer? How do you ensure that you train, you equip your people to enable this to happen?
So, and this is a very good question, Venkatesh, because we have seen this transition happening when we move from a kind of a delivery center or a brick and mortar approach to a work at home approach, where people are actually moving from this is a paradigm shift for everyone, probably for every one of us, because we have never seen that happening except in other countries. right? So there are good things that has happened, and there are certain things where we also need to focus on, which has happened. So the paradigm shift when it happened from your brick and mortar to the work at home workforce is the technology has taken a head start. So technology is the leader now, where technology or the solutions that we are talking about needs to evolve themselves so that they can adapt to the challenges that the work at home users are facing or work at home communities are facing. So for example, let's take it's a classic example, HIPAA, right? We all know about HIPAA certification, and we all know about the compliances that we need to do. But then that changes from your brick and mortar, where it's an enclosed location, to a people home. And how do you control that? So you have to adapt to AI forensics. You have to adapt to all your methodologies of AI in terms of monitoring the productivity of the workforce. All those things have to be bundled together, and at the same point of time, in a secured way. So how it's very easy to be secured in a brick and mortar location, but the moment it comes to the work at home, your home computer, the whole internet gets exposed. You are exposed to the whole internet. So are the threats. So how do we control the threats, and how do we direct those threats or channelize those in a way which we can control? So then the artificial based zero trust concept or artificial intelligence based micro segmentation comes into the play on how we can protect our users from those kind of models. So the paradigm shift has not happened on just people moving from the brick and mortar or the delivery center location to the work at home, but during the pandemic, the paradigm shift has happened on the technology front. It's a huge technology change for us to adapt to, and we have adapted to that. From a southern perspective, we have adapted to whatever I have talked about, right? But still, there is a long way to go, because the as I have earlier pointed out, the threat is evolving. There is always a non-state actor who is trying to do something mischievous, and with AI, there is always a very thin line on what is if there is a human, then he knows what is ethical and what is not ethical. But if it is an AI, then there is the ethics always becomes a question whether the human ethics is the AI ethics or not. And if that control has been taken by an AI state actor or a non-state actor, then how he can manipulate the AI can be catastrophic, right? So these are the challenges that we have to adapt to when we have migrated from a traditional office working or brick and mortar or delivery center working model to the work at home, I would say.
Prashant, all of you represent global organizations which incidentally are headquartered in India, or all of you have a large workforce which is based out of India, but essentially these are global organizations. Your customers are across the world. Given that, is there any kind of concern for the Indian BPM industry in terms of some kind of competition in terms of some of the challenges from other places? Because AI skilled workforce essentially means that some of the traditional advantages that the Indian BPM players have enjoyed in the past are likely to go away, because this is not necessarily about cost arbitrage. This is not even about technology and domain expertise. So are there any concerns for the sector as a whole, and how does FirstSource view that?
So I think it's a very interesting question, right? I mean, it can be answered multiple ways. But a quick preamble to that is, like, with AI skills, another thing, Venkatesh, which has happened is there has been a massive democratization of AI, right? What do I mean by that is, like, some of the larger software players, like the cloud providers, have, packaged AI offerings in a way that can be consumed by, regular development teams, right? Business end users. So with that shift, what has happened is adoption of AI, with a limited set of cross-skilling, right? We've been able to achieve, right? Now, of course, you need a specialist AI workforce on the technology side, right? And then, you have these AI configurators, the data players, all of whom need to come together to deliver an end-to-end solution, right? So our approach has been, like, strengthen the AI specialist workforce, right? But also cross-skill and, strengthen the existing teams, who can do AI configuration, drive data, because any AI project, about 30% is core AI, right? 70% is about data. It's about QA. It's about, understanding the transition, right? And the shifts. So, that has been, kind of our approach, right, so far. And in fact, over the past couple of years during the pandemic, and hopefully we are in the post-pandemic era right now, adoption has increased significantly. We've been able to get better at it. Of course, being remote poses its own challenges, but, with significant investment in collaboration tooling, right? Having initiated hybrid working models, we've essentially, I believe, successfully circumvented, some of these challenges.
Let me reposit that to Sukanya, probably to get a additional perspective. Is TCS also therefore hedging bets by, as I said, while you have large India-based workforces, all the three of you, opportunities, left field opportunities or threats could emerge from anywhere, given the shift which is happening. So are you also hedging bets in terms of investing in your workforces globally, enhancing global footprints, investing in people in your wherever they are present across the globe in terms of delivery footprint?
Absolutely, Venkatesh. And I wouldn't even call it hedging. It's a given. I mean, there are no two ways about it at all. So, I mean, you look at it in three ways, Venkatesh. From TCS perspective, there are three dimensions in which we want to enhance our workforce. One is the technical skills ought to be there. We've got so many TCS AI, tools, technologies that we are deploying for our customers. We continuously hone our workforce to ensure that they are up to speed in terms of how to leverage, how to build, how to deploy. So that's one dimension of it. You hone the technical skills. The second dimension is the whole functional aspect of it, Venkatesh. I mean, just having technical proficiency without a functional, appreciation is not going to do us any good. It's not going to do our customers any good. So TCS is consciously invested in ensuring that a combination of both technical and functional skills are honed for the workforce, bringing in a whole new gambit of techno-functional experts who have a good appreciation, have a good technical acumen, have functional expertise, and that's when you bring value to the customers. See, what really happens is disruption happens at the cusp of where customers have a business challenge, and then we have a valuable solution that we can offer. So these techno-functional experts that we've honed, homegrown, skilled over a period of time are deployed. They know what to use, when to use, how to deploy, ensure that delivery to our customers, to ensure there's enhanced user experience, your strategic imperatives for the CXOs are met, you're driving speed to value, because nobody wants to invest in a technology, take months together to go back and deploy that, right? I mean, they want to invest and see results, almost in a couple of weeks. And that's where we are heading towards. And that's possible only when you marry the functional and technical, create contextual masters to address the problem statement at hand. So I don't think it's even hedging anymore, Venkatesh. It's a given. You have to go down that path.
Please go ahead, Amneet.
So one more point to add to what Sukanya has just now mentioned, right? So there is with the AI coming into the picture, we are also seeing a new kind of work model which is getting developed, which we call as the gig. So if you look into from that perspective, Sutherland is heavily invested in the concept of gig, and we have onboarded people not only from internal people but who have the expertise, but also external who can be a part of this whole gig workforce and who can help in quicker adoption of the technology and faster delivery or turnaround.
While all the three of you practitioners on the ground make it sound easy, I'm sure that it is like, as the old adage goes, trying to fix a blown out tire even as a car is running. It isn't never easy. So Prashant, given those challenges, is the workforce, is the pool large enough pool available, an AI-enabled trained pool available? Are all of you investing massively, because there are huge training costs when this kind of shifts happen? How are you ensuring, not just from a first source perspective, from the Indian sector as a whole, is there a large enough pool, and are we going to face challenges, and are we ready to move to make this shift happen?
Large enough pool, Venkatesh. I mean, if anybody is going to say yes. So I think, the pandemic shift, the kind of acceleration we've seen, the talent marketplace, I don't think any of us have seen, what we are going through, right? Just from a supply demand gap standpoint. Okay. Now we are solving it multiple ways, right? We are focusing and trying to address part of our talent challenge through hiring, right? But we continue to emphasize on internal cross skilling, right? Picking the right talent, because we've basically sliced the entire AI piece, right? So it is not, there is the specialist AI, there are the AI configurators, there are the AI automation, and then we have the AI operations teams, right? So run cross-skilling programs, and then build expertise, right? The other way we are trying to also solve for this is like how we go to market, right? And particularly with AI-driven solutions, it is vertical AI as opposed to generic AI, right? It is very contextual to the use cases, right? Even sub-vertical, if I would, if I were allowed. The second aspect is like pick and partner correctly. So partnerships have also been key in terms of how we build the overall solutions landscape. So yeah, I mean, that's broadly how we are approaching it, Venkatesh.
So Kanya, large part of this workforce is also in tier 2, tier 3, where your conventional training probably would not be able to reach so easily, or even tapping into the kind of talent available there. How is somebody like TCS, which is so process driven, how is it addressing this particular challenge?
I think from a talent supply perspective, given this whole distributed workforce happening currently, and we're seeing a huge talent pool, not just from the urban dwelling community, but also this whole hub spoke and edge model seems to be working really well, because when you start tapping into the talent pool in smaller towns and cities, we start creating delivery hubs. And in order to enable this, there's this whole back of talent management crew that's there in TCS, enabling programs while we pick and choose people with the relevant skill set and graduation and so on. There's always a certain degree of upskilling that is required so that they are suitable for the roles that they're put into. The whole talent management community with learning and development programs that are designed specifically catering to a whole gambit of techno-functional elements that we're looking at. It essentially leads to niche skill development as well, Venkatesh. I mean, you bring in a person with a base skill set, and depending on where you want to deploy the resource, the upskilling of 2 or 3 programs that you need to add on from our L&D team, we've got those capsule size models that essentially helps the resource to go back, get up to speed to a certain level, and leverage those high-end digital skills to go back and put it into workforce, and ensure that it is used, it is reused, and it is brushed up further. So that's essentially where the whole element comes in. And I want to add another dimension, Venkatesh. From a whole talent supply perspective, I think post-COVID, the whole diversity angle has taken a whole different gambit as well. And TCS has very consciously essentially looked at engaging women workforce, giving them additional training. We've got a lot of contextual masters on those lines. And it's kind of in a blessing of sorts. In the last 2 years, we've got more people. The new work arrangement with flexible locations, timing options has empowered a large number of women to be an integral part of this turbocharged environment that we're looking at the moment.
Not many sectors in the economy can still boast of double-digit growth. The BPM is one of the few sectors which is hitting close to that. Are there pools of opportunity, especially with this BPM 4.0 model, which you think Indian players can tap into internationally, which they have traditionally not done till now?
So one of the opportunities, Venkatesh, that we can clearly think of is on the innovation field, right? And I have seen that personally happening, wherein with the whole changes in the structure of how the whole workforce is designed now, or how the people are working, the innovation in terms of the new solution development is coming up from nooks and corner, everywhere it is coming up, right? The good thing that we are doing as a company is we are promoting them to get patented and create a revenue model or support them through a business model, so that they can, the niche, even it is India or anywhere else, predominantly we are seeing that in India. So these players who are starting to develop something in an innovative way in the AI field, we are encouraging to go for them to go for a patent, and then go sell it as a product, and that becomes a, you don't know, at some point of time that company can become so big, like it can give competition to others. So the mindset of India from a general outsourcing is slowly changing towards a productized way, where we have to innovate, and we have to do patent, we have to bring that IP around, and we then can sell that, and that is happening across the board, I would say.
Prashant, are we seeing the proof of the pudding, of course, as I keep repeating, is in the eating? Are we seeing that happen, that shift to platform, IP, patents? Are you witnessing that both from a first source perspective as well as from Indian BPM industry perspective?
Absolutely. I think the way the shift is happening, Venkatesh, is, there are white spaces in the industry, right? And, first source had, right, and, the way the transition happened for first sources, we've had areas where we did operations, right? We had like domain depth, operational knowledge. We looked to capture that operational knowledge through platforms and, brought in IT ops synergies, and we were able to deliver outcome-based offerings, right? We continue to do that. We have a full-fledged digital organization, which is focused on building out what we call concept nodes, right? We look at demand side, supply side dynamics, we look at white spaces, we look at areas, where we can really compete in, and, we invest in building out platforms. And then, with this, we are able to deliver an end-to-end outcome. And what it also gives us is it also helps us based on benchmarks, right? We either establish performance benchmarks, cost benchmarks, and, we are able to, help the customers, make the decisions and drive the shift. Having a platform is one thing. The second aspect is getting the industry to adopt, customers to get onboarded onto the platform, is another aspect. So we focus on both.
Are you seeing, go ahead, Sukanya.
Venkatesh, I just want to weigh in one additional component. While platform-based services are pivotal in the new BPM 4.0 world, what TCS is observing essentially another whole segment is on data management and analytics, Venkatesh, and that's where a lot of growth, a lot of scope for addressing some of the strategic imperatives are quite open there. The ability to manage fragmented data from multiple sources, to enable deep insights and better your AI models essentially is where the crux is as well. Platform, yes, it's given, it's there, but we see a lot of customers moving in this direction, and TCS is at the forefront, essentially looking at how can we mine this data with, so many, big data elements out there, our analytical tools, innovative models, and AI, levers and products that we have going in the TCS table. We're looking at how this can drive some of these imperatives, and that's another big dimension that's out there, Venkatesh.
Just to refer back to what Prashant you are mentioning, has it given you kind of a pricing power out there, wherein now we are saying outcome based rather than being mere order takers, ensuring that you say that because of the value we provide, this is how we price things. Are we seeing that happen out there in the marketplace?
In specific segments, right, where you are able to demonstrate the capability of the platform, right?
And if you could just highlight with some examples, what segments of the market do you think
so? For example, mortgage, right? Post-close operations, right? That is an area of that's an industry wide space. That is an area of particular strength where a platform, could be launched in a 180-day, turnaround time, right? Full-fledged, right? So, which was a 90-day MVP plus in 90 days, and another 90 days to get to best in class, right? So, we are able to demonstrate, the depth that we had in the domain, right? The ability of looking at the operations end to end, where we had to deploy visual AI, text AI, to reduce the human in the loop interventions. That is what is giving us, the productivity fillip and the reusability fillip, that is helping us, reduce, the cost of operations. So this way, you are able to, as an example, right? And there are several other examples of, where we've seen it, where we have depth, where, the technology intervention is right, we have the right ops process, we are able to deliver those outcomes.
I think, Amneet, either you or one of the earlier speakers referred to this as the zone, which is a continuum between BPO 3.0 and the emerging BPO 4.0, though I think Prashant did say that it's already happening. Given that, what are the challenges you see for the sector as a whole, not just for the Sutherland perspective, but for the Indian BPM sector, both in terms of its workforce, adaptation, as well as market opportunities?
So the challenges, there can be multiple challenges to that, Venkatesh. One of the challenges that I can think of is the relaxation. The government needs to relax more and more from the terms of infrastructure, from the network, from telephony regulatory perspective, right? So they have done that already in terms of reducing the OSP licenses, but it needs to go more, make it more open. In terms of accessibility directly towards the internet, so that the connectivity cost can be reduced. So that is one. Government intervention is obviously required to help in that transition and boldening that. And more investments needs to be done on the innovation, because right now we are probably in the middle, or earlier we were in the bottom of the food chain when you referred us as the back office part of the world, but we have moved ahead in terms of that, where we are, as Prashant has also pointed out, making some of the key decisions in terms of value proposition to our clients, right? And we are also selling. That is the reason why we need to do some investments on the innovations, and the government has already done that in terms of the PLI initiatives, right? Where you are actually able to do those kind of investments, and there is a benefit coming out of there. So we need to invest more on those areas in terms of PLIs, in terms of SEZs, so that the innovation can become more robust, and we move up the food chain. Not only from a Sutherland perspective, we move up the food chain where we are into the product side of the things. And when we are on the product side of the things, we are anyway good at the services. We have probably all the best players in the services sector, which is there. So what we need to do is to migrate from that paradigm shift from the to a product way, right? Where we are lacking, and where that is where the Silicon Valley, if you talk about the San Francisco, that is the hub of all these technologies brewing up. So that is where the investment needs to happen in India if we have to mature in that market.
So Kanya, would you like to add to that in terms of both the threats as well as the opportunities for the sector as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think one of the key success factors, if I want to call it that, Venkatesh, is, and I'm coming back to the enterprise function, okay, because those are the consumers of whatever, new technology tools, everything that we bring to the foray. Firstly, to understand the benefits to the business by using this. That's one. The conceptualizing, the understanding, comprehending of that becomes extremely vital. Expertise on the complete capabilities, of the platform or the tools that we're deploying, in accordance to the requirements of the business, is another key point to bear in mind. The third one that I could think of is essentially to ensure there's involvement of business users, Venkatesh, and this is the most often ignored segment of folks in the whole new AI innovation models. You have to involve the business users through continuous feedback in an agile mode, and that's been one of our success as well in TCS. When we go in for deploying new innovative models, you have to involve the business user community, because they are the end users. They give you ideas, they have the contextual knowledge. Another key element is, to ensure, whatever you're deploying, it's scalable, it's secure, you're able to have it spread across, adapted easily. There's elements of change management that becomes easier with it, because you can deploy a great, functionally awesome technical tool, but its success is only so much if your user community is not going to get to use it, or use it in the context of how it ought to be used. So that's key. That's another key element that I think I would like to emphasize on as well. And in addition to it, ensure your workforce is your upskilling them to be technically sound. You're building the technical acumen, pick resources. Not everybody wants to be technically adept, so you'll have to ensure that you give that choice back to your workforce as well. Given that you've got so many low code, no code solutions that are available, you want to put it in the hands of the user community, democratize the whole element in the workforce, with the whole host of low code, no code programs, because with the contextual knowledge and the technical acumen, and you've got the required solutions in hand, that's one other element of ensuring there's relevant success factors to seeing this go up north.
Yeah, Prashant, your perspective on this?
Yeah, so just stealing from Sukanya, right? And I think in the 1 hour we spent, one major trend is low code, no code, right? LCNC, and that has been like a major shift, right, in the past year. And at First Source, the way we looked at it was, we leveraged low code, no code technology to build out platforms, right, and then build out skills, deploy, make it work, and then we're also doing low code, no code projects, for our customers, right, as automation and end-to-end projects, right. So from a BPM standpoint, that is one major opportunity area, because it offers us the opportunity to solve the talent challenge, right? So traditional full stack, distributed builds, are most certainly relevant, right? They will continue to form the foundation of our platforms, but there are much more simpler use cases that are evolving for now that low code, no code tech can easily pick up, right? So that's a major trend and an opportunity area. But back to my overall perspective, and I was reflecting on how First Source evolved, right, over the years. Today we consider ourselves, right, a CX specialist firm, right? But ultimately the journey started with contact centers and contact centers globally. Those contact center operations evolved to digitally empowered contact centers, where we said that contact center, we are solving customers' problems. There are multiple ways to solve it, right? Multiple interventions, be it chat, right? Be it self-service, and then, brought in those cognitive interventions, right? We also looked at how to improve agent productivity. Now the shift from there, right, to now is around, agent experience and customer experience, right? We are looking at customer journeys. We are looking at what outcomes are needed, right? So, and looking at agent experience to figure out what alerts need to go to the agent so that the customer experience is superior. So it is not about how many contacts, how many calls. It's about if you're running outbound or inbound, how have you been able to solve the problem? What are your NPS scores, right? What are the outcomes you've delivered, right, in terms of sales, or depending on the process that we are delivering to, right? That is the now. But as we look to the future, right, and with all the massive investments in metaverse, right, and with the the Web 3.0 and the futuristic guidelines kicking in, right? So guidelines have not even evolved, right? The future of contact will change, right, completely. So as technology evolves, as markets evolve, as behaviors evolve, right, I think the fundamental nature of the web is being challenged, right? So this is not nothing for us to worry about perhaps in the next few years, but those are shifts which will happen. And if we are able to get an early in on some of those shifts, that will prove to be a massive opportunity for the industry.
That's such an interesting note. Amneet, go ahead. You wanted to add something? Yeah.
So, Venkatesh, one of the things that you have asked is what are the threats that we perceive, right, with the whole concept. And I have, when I started with that. So the biggest threat that exists at this point of time for the whole industry or for the whole concept as such is the cybersecurity threats. There is no other way around that. We have seen this happening, and as Sukanya has pointed out, the immense data that we are mining, right? And these are all client data, and these are all personal information. So the threat that we are seeing is real and is near. So that is one of the areas which I see where every organization will probably, and that is the nightmare for us, like for infrastructure and for CISOs. or for CIOs. The area which we have to focus, where we have to invest in order to enable and nurture the whole concept, is to protect the whole organization and the enterprise and the industry for such kind of threats.
I'm sure that that is something which the sector will look into, reflect, and address those challenges. The Indian BPM industry has not merely adapted, actually shaped the outcome of how things have evolved over the last couple of decades, led by players like yourselves and the organizations you represent. Thank you so much for your insights, lady and gentlemen. Thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you.